This whole month, as Tim indicated, we're talking about love. Now, that's a very small, narrow topic to really focus on. And today, the topic we have is the healing power of love. And so when I sat down and how I put these talks together, I don't want to necessarily get into how the sausage is made here, but it's a process. It's a process where I sit down and really think about the topic for at least a week or so and reflect upon it and what is it that really, and it organically grows into whatever, I present when I come and visit with you and other spiritual centers. But one of the thoughts that occurred to me when I was thinking about the healing power of love relates to something I learned a few years ago about doing spiritual messages. Whenever you're coming, and this applies not only to New Thought communities like CSL, but any other denomination. So if you went to a Catholic church or any kind of Protestant church, and you're hearing a message, what philosopher Ken Wilber said, and resonates with me, is that every spiritual community, when they are talking and giving a message, they have two underlying purposes for that message. One part of the message is to help you navigate around this material physical world that we're living in, so that you take the spiritual concepts that are taught in that particular spiritual community. Here it's New Thought, Ernest Holmes teachings, and other New Thought teachers, taking that philosophy and applying it or translating it so that you can better live your material life here on earth. And that is one purpose of every spiritual message. The other purpose of every spiritual message is to recognize that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and to focus on that spiritual being part, and to recognize that there is a role for us in our evolution to transcend the earthly experience. And so when you come in here in a message like this, hopefully you're going to walk away with something that you can apply in this physical material world of earth and earthly experiences. But hopefully you're going to get something that will inspire you to move upward in your consciousness to higher levels, to understand that you are more than this physical world, and that your true being and your true nature transcends this physical world. And so in that light, what I've done today is consciously call attention to that, because we're going to talk about the healing power of love from two ways. I'm going to first talk about healing power of love as it relates to us in the experience of love here on earth as human beings. But then towards the end, I'm going to come back and say, and how does love take us and can be used as a healing force for helping us to transcend earth as well, to understand the non-dual consciousness of who we really are. So that's where we're going for the next few minutes. Now, love is a big, big topic, and they've been talking about it all this month, and will continue for the other weeks of this month. But what I want to get us first anchored into is, what is love? Now, I'm not going to debate it and talk about it from a high-level intellectual standpoint. I'd rather take us into the feeling of love in this moment. So we're going to do a little exercise. And if you feel comfortable, I'd like you to play along with the home version of the game. And I would like you, if you would, just close your eyes, unless you're driving or something. Close your eyes and I want you to reflect on a person that you love deeply. And I don't want us to focus on pets. Yes, we can love them. I don't want us to focus on sunrises and beautiful meals. And yes, we can love those. And I don't want you to focus on yourself. I'll come back to that later. But I want you to think about another person other than you that you deeply, deeply love. I want you to have that face come into your awareness in this moment. And as that face is coming forward and into your awareness, and if you can't think of anybody, just imagine someone, or someone that you have felt love for. I want you to imagine that person's face and see and feel it within you. And now I want it can be a parent, it can be a child, a grandchild, it can be a spouse or partner, a significant other, somebody who's currently in your life or somebody who was previously in your life. Have that face in your mind. And as you focus upon that person, what I now want you to focus on is that energy in you, that feeling within you. That feeling that you call love for that person. Do you feel an energetic flow? And I'm hoping that you do, that you feel an energetic flow that moves from you, this entity that you call you, to this other person. There is an energetic flow where you are enveloping that person, surrounding them with a loving energy, and that it contains certain characteristics. As you continue feeling into that, I want you to feel the sense that you want the best for that other person. You want them not only to meet all of their human needs, but you want them to thrive, to find their calling and to live it, to find their spiritual purpose, to find their truth. You want them to be protected as they move through this earth. You may feel a sense of wanting to be with them in their company. You may feel a sense of wanting to be affectionate with them, to touch them, to hold them. There's this energetic flow of connection that you're feeling between you and this other person that binds you and bounds you in some ineffable kind of way. I want you to feel into that in this moment. Now, you probably have other descriptors for it, and that's fine. And I'd invite you now that you've felt into that, you can open your eyes again and come back to the room. But as we go through the next few minutes and I talk about the human experience of love, I want you to anchor back into that feeling as we go through this. I'm not going to call you back into a closed eye exercise, but I do want you to tap into that feeling, that essence that you were feeling a moment ago. Now, as I was putting this talk together, we're first going to talk about that healing power of love that we were just feeling from a human standpoint. And as I started thinking about some of the messages I wanted to give you, what this organically grew into was Mark's lessons on love. I didn't go to any book. There's plenty of them out there. I didn't go to any kind of music to look for lessons, but I looked for my own experiences. Where have I moved in my own life from moving from one level of love and understanding of love to a new level? And as I thought about that, the words came up for me, and I will label myself this, and you may identify with some of the things I said, is there is a immature kind of love that we first develop as a human being. We first hear all these love songs, and we're first teenagers, and we first have that feeling of falling in love, that we have a sort of immature understanding of love. And I had that for many, many years of my life. I had a very true, immature understanding of love. And it's only later in life that I started, through the pain and struggle of relationships and learning through that pain and struggle, that I started developing a more mature understanding of love. And so what I've boiled this down to, and for the next few minutes, I want to give you 5 things that I learned personally that I would label that I used to be or express as an immature kind of love, where I now feel and aspire to a more mature kind of love. And in this process of moving from the sense of immaturity or a small sense of self-love to a greater sense of love, what I want you to see is it's also a spiritual path. It's a spiritual process of moving. It's a healing. It is a healing within our consciousness of what love really is. Okay? Now, one of the first things that I discovered, and it is on my list, is that love is a choice. Love is a choice. Now, that's a mature understanding, because the immature understanding is I'm buffeted about by the winds of life and I fall in and out of love. Now, I'm talking about things that right now are going to sound very much like they're relating to significant other love. But I want to broaden this, and everything I'm talking about here also relates to love of friends, love of family, any kind of love that you have for anyone or anything. There is an immature aspect to it and a mature aspect to it. But one of the first things that I always felt was that I had to fall in love, and it was something I had no control over. But what I've come to understand is that love is truly a choice, that I can choose to love someone or I can choose not to love someone. Okay? So that's the first one. And very related to that is the second thing that I learned, is that we tend to see love as a type of transaction. The immature love says, I will love you if you love me. I will love you if you do the things I want you to do, so that we have this transaction. And I will do the things that you want me to do so that you can feel the love from me, etc. So we tend to walk through early on in life seeing love and love with anyone as a transactional thing. I will love you if you will give me affection or sex. I will love you if you support me and give me money. I will love you if you give me children. I will love you if you love me back and support me in the endeavors that I wish to do. Okay, the problem sometimes runs into is that we disagree on the transactions. That I might fail in my efforts to meet my end of the bargain, and then you might withdraw your love. And then love becomes very tied to us needing some sort of, sometimes explicitly stated, but more often than not, very implicit agreements that we create with other people, that this love is based on us agreeing that we're going to do these things for each other, and then in that. And if we break our agreements, what happens? We fall out of love. We end the love. Okay. Now there is a third thing that I've learned in through the years regarding love and how it can heal you, is that a good, healthy love starts with a good sense of self-love. That you have to know and love and value yourself, and from that space, you are now available to love someone else. Now, what's the flip side of that? What's the immature side of that? The immature side of that is I come into a loving relationship feeling inadequate, feeling that I have a hole in me. It's that old Jerry Maguire movie thing where you complete me. Well, if I approach a relationship that I need you to complete me, then I'm coming from a sense of being inadequate already in myself. So I have to approach a relationship feeling whole and complete. And from that power of being, I can now choose love. It's no longer a transaction. It can be something I choose to do. But I have to come from that healthy state. What happens if we come in from the immature state is that sometimes if we think that we need the other person to complete us, then we give in to them and we allow their needs to be met over our needs, and we allow our needs to be subjugated to the other person's needs. And then we have an imbalance in the needs. And this leads me to the fourth thing that I've learned, is that there is the necessity of a healthy balance of meeting the needs of both people. In fact, my wife and I tend to talk about that third entity that emerges from the forming of our relationship, is that my love for her and her love for me has now created something called the relationship that emerges from that. And we have to do a care and feeding of the relationship to make sure that it is kept powerful. If we get out of whack, if one's needs are getting met over the other, what happens? Somebody gets resentful or hurt, or they get mad or angry. It's very key in those moments that you communicate. You communicate that there's about an outer balance. The immature aspect of this one is that we don't care about the needs of the other person. We don't necessarily see that there is a relationship that needs to be fed. One of the greatest, if there was only one thing I would ask you to leave here with today, is that when you're in a relationship with another person, this question is key. What do you think? What do you want? Because so many times we allow our ego-driven thoughts to say, this is what I want, and to hell with what you want. I want what I want. And, those first four, let me just run through them again. Love is a choice. We're not just buffeted about by falling in and out of love. Love is not transactional. Love is just given without any kind of expectations in the past. It's unconditional. Third is that you have to start with a sense of your self being whole and perfect and complete, and knowing that you come from a degree of personal wholeness, self-love. And then fourth, you see the relationship as something that is balanced, and there's a care and feeding towards that relationship. Okay. Now, in my first marriage, this is where I learned a lot of this. And I didn't know for many years, many of what I just outlined to you. And there's a fifth one coming up, by the way. But one of the things that happened is that things got so out of balance that we got into a harmful situation. But luckily, we were able to communicate about it and talk about how we had gotten there. And as we laid things out, and both of us consciously looked to try to fix things, all of these things started coming out. And I might also confess, this was when I really got into New Thought and Science of Mind teachings, was taking classes during the time that this crisis was occurring. And it helped me to move through, as well as my first wife, in terms of us understanding how we had gotten to where we were, what we believed about relationships, and the shift that we had to make to now recognize that we needed to do more on the care and feeding, and that love was a choice and not just, we could have easily said, well, I'm out of love with you, bye, divorce. And many people choose that. And then they recreate the same thing again over and over. Okay. But if you're healing, which is what we ended up doing, was healing the relationship to a degree. And then that allowed me to get to the point where I could see all the mistakes I'd made by not asking, what do you think? What do you want? And other similar questions that took into the needs of the other person. But to recognize that there's this relationship that I've got to maintain and control if I truly love the person. Now, back to the meditation a minute ago, and had you close your eyes, I said, I wanted you to imagine that person's needs were met. To me, that's a key aspect when we love somebody else, is do we want their needs met? But if we love ourselves, we also want our needs met. And so there's a love that has to come from ourselves, for ourselves, and a love for the other person that recognizes that joint needs being met. It's very crucial. The final learning that I got from my first marriage was that relationships continue even after they end in form. And what do I mean by that? Think about a person who you loved and they passed away. Does the love continue? Yes, of course it does. But what happens if you're in like a loving relationship with somebody or a friendship relationship and it ends on a sour note and you're mad at the other person? Does the relationship and the love continue? Oftentimes not. So what we're really looking at here is a recognition that I can love somebody and the love can continue even if we're not together anymore. And so in my first wife and I, we consciously ended the relationship. I won't say that it was easy, but I learned through the process of that you can continue loving somebody else even when you're not physically with that person. Now, that seems like an easy thing to learn because we all know people we're not with physically. Our kids grow up and move away, and grandkids are in other states and all that kind of stuff. And we love them. We're not always physically with them. But if there's a relationship that we see that's sort of like on one level is ending and changing to a different level, then can we maintain the love in that? Can we maintain the love in that? Now, I've been blessed that the conscious way in which my first wife and I ended a relationship allowed us to be close friends even to this day. And that my current wife and her friends, I'm friends with her husband and so forth. And we do all these family things together, which other people are very often hearing, oh, you're so lucky because you do this. Well, it had to move. The only way that could occur was for this healing to occur. For this healing to occur by moving from the state of an immature expression of love in my life to a more mature expression of love in my life. And so what I'm calling you to do here on this human experience is as you look around and think about the loving relationships you've got in your life right now, your friends, your family, your significant others, are they conscious relationships? Are you choosing to have love? Are you making it based on conditions, or is it an unconditional love? You're going to love them no matter what. There's no agreements. It's just a choice. I'm going to love you. Sometimes that choice may mean that I have to remove myself from you. Again, love can continue when you're not physically with the person. Okay, so think of, there's people who can be in abusive relationships and say, I'm going to remove myself because we want what's best for both people. And if I'm being harmed by the relationship and I'm allowing you to harm me in the relationship, then is that the best for both of us? It's not. And sometimes we have to break the physical bonds of the relationship. But that doesn't mean the love has to end. That's a key thing to keep in mind, because we can consciously choose to continue love. And so who are you consciously choosing to love right now? And the more we can move into this mature kind of love where we consciously love people, we don't make it conditionally, we come from a healthy sense of ourself. We feed the relationship knowing that both people's needs are met and important. And we know that the relationship can continue even when it's not in physical form. Then we can develop a healthy relationship that will serve all of our friendships and so forth. But there's a side benefit that can occur to this as well, because it opens us to the idea of an expanded idea of love. And this is sort of like we're going to start melding into that more higher metaphysical kind of stuff. Because at this point, what I really want you to see is that moving to a more mature understanding and expression of love in your life is an evolutionary process that's opening you up to a greater sense of the spiritual nature of you and everyone around you. And that opens you to greater and greater degrees of love. That you now see, well, I can choose to love anyone. I can choose to see the divinity in somebody. I can choose to love it. I don't have to agree with a person's religious beliefs or political beliefs or how they, play their music or choose to do what X, Y, and Z. I am not bound by their human personal choices. I can choose to love them or not, which now opens me to loving people even that are much different from me. And maybe I might not enjoy being in their presence, but I can still love them. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so what we're really trying to do is to move to that space. And that's where we on our spiritual path are really moving, is to expanding the vision of love to encompass us. What we often talk about in sessions here is a famous quote from Teilhard de Chardin that love is an evolutionary force. Now, we tend to think of love as a romantic or emotion kind of thing, and that's our human expression. But Chardin was very, very wise in pointing out that love is an evolutionary force. What do we mean by that? Well, we're all on a spiritual evolutionary path. We all think we're separate and apart from one another. We all think we're separate entities, competing and negotiating through life, this physical life. But we know at some level we're all one. So the basic essence that we teach here is that everything is one and everything is united. And the spiritual evolutionary path is for us to remember that. And so this expanded vision of love takes us from divisiveness to a further step on the process of unity. Okay. And as we do that, what's moving us along? It's that feeling of love that we all felt. Love is calling me to feel connected to you and to you and to you and to you. Everybody out there, I'm feeling love for you. And the more that I can feel love for you, the more connected I feel to you, the more that I am feeling the united aspect of this existence that we have. So when Chardin talked about it being an evolutionary force, the feeling and emotion of love that we feel as humans, we could do a whole thing on how it plays out in how a cell chooses to subjugate itself a little bit and connect with another cell. That's actually love playing out. The affinity that's played out through all of the manifestation of physical life, all the way up through the combinations of how the cells manifest our bodies and work together, is an aspect of this loving relationship. Because as we continue to move upward and onward, not only in physical form to more complex expressions of it, but to higher levels of consciousness and awareness of the unity of us all, love is the force that's both pushing us and pulling us. It's pulling us. Pulling us from where, you might ask? Well, it's pulling us from God. It's pulling us from spirit. It's pulling us from whatever that ineffable thing is that created this universe, and all of us in this expression has a power of love within it that is calling and pulling us towards it. Ernest Holmes, when he talked about healing, he made two famous statements about it. One is that he said that he equated healing to the recognition of wholeness. That healing equates to wholeness, WHOLENES, wholeness. That we are already whole, perfect, and complete. Now, in the spiritual realm, we can imagine that essence and truth. But down in the physical realm, our experiences are sometimes less than that. We think, well, how can I be whole, perfect, and complete? Look how I screwed up and had an immature love for so many years and blah, blah, blah. But it's a nature of the fact that we are moving ever towards that perfection. And that's what our evolutionary path is all about. And so when Holmes says that healing equates to wholeness, what he's talking about is that the only healing that really needs to be done is for us to recognize our wholeness. He said there is no healing, there is only a process of revealing. Those of you who are practitioners probably got drilled on that quote back in class. There is no healing, I'm paraphrasing, there is no healing, there's only a process of revealing the truth. What are we revealing the truth of? That we're all one, that we're all united in the oneness, that we are all divine, that we are all perfect. Perfect God, perfect man, perfect being. We are all perfect. And that's what we're revealing. So as we now look at the healing power of love as a transcendent force, what do I mean by that? To transcend the human form and expression, to recognize that we are spiritual beings that transcend all of this stuff. There is a love force coming from the divine that is like a tractor beam in Star Trek, trying to pull us in, pull us back home, to remember the truth of that. So this love expression and this moving from an immature love to a higher love is pushing us in that direction. And somewhere in the entity of the vast oneness, God is reaching out and pulling you. Let's feel that for a moment. Let's feel that. We're going to do another closed eye exercise. And I invite you again to close your eyes. But I want you to imagine in this moment something different. I want you to imagine somebody in your life that you felt so loved you that they were always there for you and could protect you and provide for you. Somebody who had your best interest always in mind. Somebody who loved you and wanted the best for you. Can you visualize that person? I know for me it was my father. My father. With all his warts and flaws in the physical realm, I always felt that he was there for me and could support me. But who is it for you? Imagine in your own mind. If you don't have somebody who comes to mind, just imagine what that feeling might be like. What I want you then to feel is that when you think about that person who always wanted the best for you and was there to protect you and guide you and help you navigate through this crazy world we live in, I want you to concentrate and feel on that power of what it's like to be loved and supported unconditionally by that essence of that person. And if you can feel that, what I now want you to do is to take that feeling and shift it. That's God. What if God, Spirit, the All, whatever name you want to use for power and presence that's behind this universe, what if that feeling is something you could feel every day, that you are guided and loved, that there is an energy flowing to you, around you, and through you. And its origins appear to be this source of the universe. You can open your eyes now. What does it feel like to be loved and supported? I mean, if you've had that feeling, you know how wonderful it is. I was reading this spiritual teacher, Paul Brunton. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he's written a lot of books and discovered him a while back. And I was reading this one book, and he had these spiritual exercises in here for enlightenment. And one of the exercises he had was that very nature, that very experience we were doing. He said, throughout the day, to support your awakening to the realization of your unity of all that is, every day, this is just one of many experiences you could do. But one thing he encouraged you to do was to every day stop for a moment or two and feel into that feeling of receiving unconditional love, support, and a desire by some power greater than you that wants the best for you. How would we navigate life if we knew there's always that power that's looking out for me? Well, I think I know how I would feel, and I know how I do feel. And this exercise is it's one that my wife and I have been doing recently. And it's powerful because it reminds us, it's a time to stop every day and remind me that life is more than just all this stuff I'm immersed in, first off, that there's a power greater than me. And it also reminds me that there's a power that loves and supports me and wants the best for me. Okay, so as we come to a conclusion here, I want to sort of put a bow on all of this for just a moment. We often feel and navigate through life as if we are human beings having a human experience. And we're immersed in this, and we don't see anything else but the human experience. And we sometimes, when we focus on that, we see the warts, the things that are wrong, the incompletions. What I want you to do is to spend time every day remembering you're a spiritual being having a human experience. That love is an evolutionary force that was embedded in the entire universe to help everything remember that it's united in oneness. That you, when you first felt the feeling of love many years ago in your life, that you were feeling that essence of God in its first baby steps, trying to remind you about looking outside yourself for your interconnection with something outside you. So that those early immature aspects of love that I was outlining served us in those first baby steps of growing outside of me alone to be connected to someone else. But at a certain point, I had to unlearn things I had learned in this world to recognize there's a more mature expression of love, that I can choose love. Love is given unconditionally. That love is given from a sense that I love myself and want myself's needs to be met. That love is an interrelationship with other expressions of the one, and we are continuously wanting, if we know oneness, I want you to thrive, and you want me to thrive. And can we approach every relationship that way? And the other thing is to remember that we're all interconnected, whether we're physically together or not. And so that love that we're feeling doesn't have to be in a relationship where I'm physically interacting with the person. I can choose to love anyone, whether they're in my physical life or not. And finally, to recognize that I am loved by a power and presence that extends beyond me and is continuously reminding me and calling me home, calling me back to my source, the source of spirit and God. And when I truly, truly recognize that, then the healing power of love will be totally manifested in my life and in yours. So let's pray. So as we move inward in this moment, we simply tap into that feeling again, that feeling of love, that feeling of being supported by that divine essence, spirit, God, infinite intelligence, the source. The source has given us each this gift, the gift of life, the gift of this human expression, but within that, the gifts of so many seeds of the divine, an evolutionary force that draws us higher and higher upwards, consciousness itself, the desire to express our creative talents and abilities, and love. All of these are divine characteristics embedded in me, and I know this for each and every one of us, that we have these things embedded in us, calling forth our lives to its greater and highest expression. And I know that as we leave this spiritual center today or move on from this video that we may be watching, that we do so with a greater and higher sense of how we can bring more and more mature love into our lives and to allow ourselves to tap into that essence of the divine and manifest heaven here on earth. And so with all this anchored into my conscious and yours, we release these words into the law, knowing, total completeness, that they're so. And so it is.